I used to work the overnight shift at a small 24/7 general store inside a mall in South Carolina. The mall itself closed around 9:30 at night, but our store stayed open all night because it had a separate back entrance from the parking lot. During the day, customers could enter from inside the mall. But after closing time, I had to pull down a heavy metal gate between our store and the mall hallway. That gate always made me feel a little safer. Once the gate was down, the mall side became quiet and dark. The bright lights turned off, and only the dim night lights stayed on. They were just bright enough for the security cameras, but not bright enough to make the place feel normal. Most nights were boring. I would restock shelves, clean the aisles, check the register, and wait for the occasional customer coming through the back door. But one night changed the way I felt about that place forever. It was sometime after midnight. I was organizing a shelf near the front of the store when I heard a strange rattling sound. At first, I thought something had fallen. Then I heard it again, metal shaking. I looked toward the front gate and froze. There was a man standing on the other side of the metal gate, inside the dark mall hallway. Both of his hands were wrapped around the bars. At first, I thought he was a security guard. That was the only thing that made sense. But when I walked closer, I realized he was not wearing a uniform. He was just some random man. He had on a dirty black and white plaid shirt and loose blue jeans. His hair looked messy, and his clothes looked like he had been outside for days. But the strangest thing was his face. He was not looking at me, he was looking up at the ceiling. I stopped a few feet from the gate and said, "Sir, are you okay?" He didn't answer. He just kept looking up. His fingers tightened around the gate, and he slowly shook it again. The sound echoed through the empty store. I asked again, "Do you need help?" Still nothing. He didn't blink. He didn't look down. He didn't even act like he heard me. He just stared at the ceiling like there was something up there. I glanced up too, but there was nothing. Just old lights and security cameras. I started feeling really uncomfortable. There was supposed to be a security guard somewhere in the mall, but I had no idea where. I also realized I didn't know the emergency number for mall security. Nobody had properly trained me for that kind of situation. So I backed away and went behind the counter, trying to put some distance between us. The man stayed at the gate. For another minute or two, I could still hear his hands moving against the metal bars. Then he slowly stepped backward, but he did not turn around. He walked backward into the dark mall hallway, with his head still tilted up toward the ceiling. Then he disappeared into the shadows. I stood there behind the counter, staring at the empty hallway. I tried to convince myself that he was just drunk, or maybe homeless, or mentally unwell, but I still felt wrong. After a few minutes, I forced myself to go back to work. I swept the aisles. I fixed the shelves. I checked the fridge area. But every few seconds, I looked back toward the gate. The hallway was empty. At least I thought it was. About 20 minutes later, I heard the back entrance slide open. That door led directly from the parking lot into our store. Customers sometimes came in late at night for cigarettes, drinks, or snacks, so I didn't think much of it. I was between two shelves, so I couldn't see who entered. I just said, "I'll be right with you." No one answered. I finished sweeping the aisle and walked back to the register. That was when I saw him. A customer was standing at the far end of the alcohol aisle. At first, I thought he was looking at the top shelf. Then I noticed his head. It was tilted upward, just like the man at the gate. My stomach dropped. I stared at him for a second, then looked down to put the broom and dustpan under the counter. When I stood back up, he was no longer looking at the ceiling. He was looking directly at me, and he was smiling. Not a normal smile. It was wide, stiff, and empty, like someone pretending to be human but not understanding how a smile should look. Then I realized something else. It was the same man from the gate, only now his plaid shirt was gone. He had somehow gotten outside the mall, walked around to the back entrance, and entered the store like a normal customer. I couldn't move. He just stood there at the end of the aisle smiling at me. The store was silent except for the hum of the refrigerators. I wanted to say something, but my voice felt stuck in my throat. Finally, I forced out, "You need to leave." He didn't move. I said louder, "Get out or I'm calling the police." Still nothing. No blinking, no reaction. Just that same wide smile. Then he took one slow step forward. That was enough. I ran to the back room and slammed the door shut behind me. My hands were shaking so badly that I almost dropped my phone. I tried calling my manager. No answer. I called again. Still no answer. I stood there in the small back room, breathing hard, listening. For a few seconds there was nothing. Then I heard a sound at the door. Tap. Not a knock, just one soft tap. Then another. Tap, tap. It was gentle, almost polite. That made it worse. I held my breath and stared at the door handle. He didn't say anything. He didn't try to force the door open. He just kept tapping. Tap, tap, tap. I backed away until my shoulders touched the storage shelves behind me. I stayed in that room for what felt like forever. Probably only 5 minutes passed, but it felt much longer. Then the tapping stopped. The silence afterward was even scarier. I waited another minute before slowly opening the door. The store looked empty. I stepped out, holding my phone ready to run. The aisles were empty. The front gate was still closed. The back entrance was shut. The man was gone. For the rest of my shift, I stayed behind the counter and barely moved. When my manager came in the next morning, I told her everything. At first, I could tell she thought I was exaggerating. Then we checked the security footage. The cameras caught all of it. They showed the man standing at the gate, shaking it while staring at the ceiling. They showed him walking backward into the mall hallway. They showed him entering through the back door later without his shirt. They showed him standing in the aisle, smiling at me. And worst of all, they showed him standing outside the back room door, gently tapping on it. My manager went completely quiet after seeing that. She called mall security and later the police. But as far as I know, they never found him. I only worked there for about another month after that. Every night after the incident, I kept looking toward the gate, expecting to see him standing there again. Hands on the bars, head tilted up, waiting in the dark. And even now, years later, I still wonder what he was staring at on that ceiling. But I'm glad I never found out.